Hello, and welcome to Rhodes Smart Camp. I'm speaking to you now from the Camden Court Hotel in Dublin, Ireland. I just finished doing it's the Dublin International Comedy Festival. It used to be the Vodafone Dublin International Comedy Festival, but they lost Vodafone, the funding, so now it's the Paddy Power. Paddy Power is one of the electric companies of Ireland. Anywho, corporate branding, blah-de-de-blah. It's the Dublin International Comedy Festival. And I just had an amazing weekend. The last time I was here was 2019. And, oh my God, especially after a couple years ago when I was feeling really low, I should have come to Ireland. I forgot how many amazing, beautiful, and hilarious friends that I have here. And, oh my God, just so much love, so much laughter, and met some new people. But I just had the greatest weekend in Dublin, Ireland, doing this festival. And it's in Ivy Gardens, which is these beautiful gardens in the center of Dublin. And they put up tents, and it's all comedy. And there's, acrobats and people walking around on stilts. And then the comedy shows. So it's one of the most fun comedy festivals in the world. And if you've never been to Ireland, I say go. I think the Irish accent is the most sexy of all the English-speaking accents because they put this kind of hush sound at the end of words. Like, I love the way they say Egypt instead of idiot. It's got this little kind of hush sound at the end, Egypt. And I had an Uncle Bob Ryan who he was so into his Irish identity, and he used to love doing this Irish accent, but it was really outdated. It was from the movie The Quiet Man with John Wayne. And I used to always encourage him to come to Ireland and see that people don't really speak that way anymore. But he has since passed, and he never got to come to Ireland. And being Irish was like a huge part of his identity. So take that trip is all I'm telling you. Life is short, and there's probably nowhere in the world that Americans are more welcomed than in Ireland. So come to Ireland. I want to tell you, I'm going to tell you some stories this episode because I have a long, great history with Ireland. And I want to tell you some of my best stories. So my history with Ireland goes back to, it's really an interesting story. One of my oldest friends here, he's not in comedy at all. He's retired now, but he was an executive for the Irish Electric Company. Not Paddy Power. I think it was called ESB or something like that. Anywho, so I met this guy. I had a sitcom on NBC from 1996 to 1997. It was called Mr. Rhodes. I had really long hair. I played a school teacher. For those of you who may remember, not many people remember it. But when I was doing that sitcom, I was headlining at Caroline's on Broadway in New York City. And it's a pity that club, I was in New York City last month and I walked by there, and it's a pity the place no longer exists because it certainly was a holy temple to stand-up comedy. So I was headlining there, I'd say 1997. And when you came off stage at Caroline's, to go to the dressing room, you actually had to go down this hallway. And so I go down the hallway, I'm in the dressing room, and then this little short, friendly Irish guy comes bursting back into the dressing room. And he's like, "Oh, Tom, I just had to tell you how much I loved the show and how wonderful it was." And I don't do good accents. So anyway, he's just going on and on about how much he loved the show. And I couldn't believe the audacity of this man to he actually had to go down this hallway to find me in the dressing room. But he was so friendly and so amusing. I instantly liked him and his audacity, to be honest with you. So he's talking, and And I'm asking him, what are you doing in town? And he's by himself. He was there on a business trip. And I asked him, I said, so I go, are you doing anything right now? Are you busy? And he said, no. I said, would you like to go to a party with me? And he said, yeah. So little did he know that because I was on NBC, that night I had been invited to the Saturday Night Live after party. And they had sent a limousine for me. So there's a limousine waiting in front of Caroline's Comedy Club on Broadway to take me to this SNL after party that started at like 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning. So I meet this guy, and 10 minutes later, we're in my limousine, and we go to this Saturday Night Live after party, which was in a restaurant somewhere. And they had a table reserved for me. And I was like in the center of the room. Had great real estate, great positioning for this big swanky party. And it had my name on the table, and we got to drink for free. And every massive superstar you could imagine was at this party. I remember Paul Simon and Cher and just all these massive superstars. And me and my new friend, Brian Cronley is the man's name, we had the time of our lives and just laughing, and we got completely shit-faced drunk. And then we left whenever the party ended, and whatever it was, like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. Then I had the limousine drive us all over Manhattan for like an hour or two. And we just went all over Manhattan, and he and I are drunk, and we're hanging out of the sunroof like, teenage girls. And it was really, really a spectacular night. So that's how I met this wonderful man, Brian Cronley. So the next year, 1998, I took one of my first trips to London to do shows. And before I went to London, I went to Dublin. I came here for 3 days before I did my shows in London. And my friend Brian just absolutely bent over backwards, showing me the best of things to do and everything that's great about Dublin. One of the things, and I recommend this to everyone who goes to Ireland, to Dublin, is the literary pub crawl. You can Google it. It's amazing. There's like 2 or 3 actors. They take you around Dublin, and you go to these ancient pubs, and you're only there long enough to have a pint of beer. And then you move on to the next spot. So they take you to these spots that were relevant to all these writers that were from Dublin, like Oscar Wilde, James Joyce, Samuel Beckett, and then they recite a piece of their work, like act out a scene from a Samuel Beckett play, or, recite you some passage from James Joyce or Oscar Wilde. And I saw it the other night when I was walking around. And it's, a group of like 20 tourists, and it's I think the coolest thing you could do in Dublin. And then, you're a little pickled at the end of the evening, and you get to go to all these cool old pubs too. So my friend Brian, and then one of the things we did was he took me to, it's called 40 Foot. There's a place called the James Joyce Tower. At the beginning of James Joyce's book, Ulysses, he's living in this watchtower that the English built when England ran Ireland, and they were at war with Spain, and they had to, keep a lookout for Spanish enemy ships. So, and then there's this, right near the tower is this little swimming spot in the Irish Sea, and it's called 40 Foot. I don't know why, but I remember in 1998, when I went there, maybe it was March, it was freezing, it was gray. And so James Joyce, at the beginning of Ulysses, he talks about jumping into the, I think the way he said it is the snot green, scrotum tightening Irish Sea. And because that's the color, and it's really cold. And I remember jumping in it in 1998, and it was freezing. And then swim across to, it's not a big swim, but it's so cold. I felt heroic that I swam from one side to the other, from where the stairs are to where a ladder is. I mean, what is it? I maybe 50 feet, not that far. So I wanted to do that again this trip, and so Brian took me. And now it's become like a popular spot. I would say there was, maybe 50, 60 people out there. It was a sunny day. And I jumped in, and it was so cold, and I filmed it. So I know I lasted exactly 12 seconds this time. I got in, and I got out immediately. It was freezing. But that's like a pretty cool thing to do in Ireland, is to jump into the Irish Sea. And it's become kind of popular. I think a lot of people find that it's healthy to shock your system like that. But in 1998, when I first went there, Brian took me to Johnny Fox's, which is this pub up in the hills or mountains outside of Dublin. It's this ancient pub, and they have traditional Irish music. He took me to Power's Court, this old castle. Just he bent over backwards and to show me, everything that was wonderful about Dublin. And he and I have been lifelong friends. It's amazing. I've seen this guy through the years. For a while, for like a 5-year period, he was living in Tbilisi, Georgia. This Irish electric company was putting in the electrical systems for the nation of Georgia. And he flew me there, and I got to perform for the little expatriates community. 2013, when I was doing the New Zealand Comedy Festival, he was there visiting his daughter, one of his daughters who lived in New Zealand. And anyway, I've been such great friends with this guy for almost, what is that, 28 years? 1998? Yeah, 27 years. Anyway, beautiful man. And anyway, so let me tell you my stories about Ireland. So I fell in love with Dublin and Ireland that first time I came here, and I didn't even do shows, which is the remarkable thing. The first time I came to Ireland to perform was at this place called City Limits in Cork. And I remember I flew there from London, and I've played there for a long time. The guy who runs it's a wonderful guy. He quit drinking alcohol. But I remember when, we used to drink all night. And then when Ashna and I got married, he actually got us a really nice hotel. We had gone there on our honeymoon, which was a difficult period because, for those of you who know, we got married at my sister's hospital bedside, like a few hours before she died of breast cancer. So that was a difficult period for me, but Ireland cheered me up, and I was doing travel writing for the Huffington Post back when that was still kind of a cool thing before they became clickbait. And I wrote a story about Ireland, and I kind of wish I had not written this thing, because I've known the guy who owns that City Lights Comedy Club. It's a nightclub that does comedy, rather. But I just thought it was such a funny story. I put it in there, and then after it came out, I remember he wasn't happy about it. But so there was like a leak, a water leak in the kitchen of this nightclub. And the water leak on the wall, the stain looked like the Last Supper, Jesus' Last Supper with the 12 apostles. And if you ever saw it, it looks exactly like the Last Supper. It's remarkable. And then it's a water stain on the wall. And so the guy who owned the club, he always made you swear secrecy that you would never tell anyone, because he didn't want religious pilgrims coming to, lining up to come and look at his water stain. Anyway, the funny thing about it is everyone in Ireland knows about this water stain. And through the years, going around Ireland, and if I was working with another Irish comedian and they had heard that I was in Cork, everyone would invariably say, "Oh, did he show you the water stain?" So it's like he wanted it kept a secret, but it wasn't a secret. Everybody in the country knows about it. So I put that in the story that it was kind of funny that he makes you swear absolute secrecy, but then everywhere you go, they're like, "Hey, did you see the stain?" But anyway, the guy was nice to me. Anyway, I wish I hadn't put that in a story. I feel bad about it, but I thought it was funny, and hopefully someday I can make it up to the man. On that honeymoon tour, I remember, so Kevin Healy, the guy who runs the comedy in Galway, Ireland is one of my favorite places in the world. I always describe it as a mini seaport university town, San Francisco. It's like a little mini San Francisco. If you were gay or artistic in Ireland, I think you would move to Galway. And on that honeymoon tour, Kevin Healy, who has the club there, and he puts on a comedy festival every October in Galway, he lent me his brand new Jaguar for Ashna and I to drive to the cliffs of Moher. And I've never driven on the left side of the road before. And it was absolutely terrifying. These little, thin Irish country roads, and then these big motor coach tour buses would come ripping through, or like some tractor with big prongs on the back. And I was white knuckling it the whole way. And I just kept saying, "Stay left, stay left, stay left." It's so weird not to drive on the right side of the road. I'll never do it again. I was terrified. I couldn't believe I got his car back without a scratch to Galway at the end of the day. And I'll never forget pulling up by the Roisin Dub, the nightclub where they do the comedy and the festival, and just jumping up and down because I was so happy that I had delivered this car back. So Kevin Healy, one of his brothers, all these people have these massive Irish families. One of his brothers was living in Arizona, and he was back home visiting his family. And we were out drinking, and it was late, and there's a hamburger place, late night hamburger place all over Ireland, and it's called Supermax. So we were in the Supermax. Kevin wanted some curry fries. So, and I put this was in that Huffington Post story, and I called it the Battle of Curry Fries. Because we were in there, and there was these English guy. Well, there was one English guy they were like these rugby players, and they were messing with Kevin and his brother, and I remember they were drunk and stupid, and he was saying to Kevin, "Hey, I don't think you need any hamburgers. You're fat," or something. And Kevin, like, just that lovable Irish way, he'd go, "Fat? What are you talking about? I'm an athlete. I've got my body just where I wanted it." And, kind of disarmed the guy. But me and Kevin and Ashna had gotten our food, and we were outside, and Kevin's brother was still in there, and we're watching through the window. And then these 5 guys all jumped on top of Kevin's brother and started pounding him. And Kevin runs back in. And I remember this was our, it's our honeymoon. And I turned to Ashna and I go, "It's Kevin, baby. I'm going in." And I had to go in. I didn't want, my new wife to think I was a coward and I'm not a fighter, and I don't know how to do it, but I'm not going to watch 5 guys beat up a weaker, defenseless person. So I ran in, and it had been years since I had punched somebody. And I go in, and there's the English guy that was the one that was starting the most shit. And I ran in, and I punched him in the cheek, and I broke my finger on my right hand. And I had to go to the emergency room the next day. If you're going to punch somebody, you got to aim for that your two big, strong knuckles, the index finger knuckle and the middle finger knuckle. I hit him on those little tiny, soft knuckles on the lower part of the hand, and that's not the way you hit somebody. Anyway, I haven't hit anyone since then. I hope I never have to punch anyone ever again. But yeah, that was quite the ordeal, and I had to go to the what a schmuck, on your honeymoon to have to go to the emergency room and get x-rays and stuff. And I'll never forget after that I had gigs in Dublin, Ireland at the Laughter Lounge, the main oldest club in Dublin. And I was working with this Irish comedian named Keith Farnan. And I told him the whole story about how my sister had died and Ashna had gotten married at her hospital bedside. And then we came there and, the drive into the cliffs of Moher, terrified on the left side of the road, and then getting into this fight at the Supermax. If you go to Ireland, stay out of Supermax late at night. There's always people fighting. Anyway, so I tell him the whole story. And Keith Farnan said the most profound thing to me. He said, "You know what, Tom? I think you wanted to punch God in the face, and God wasn't available, and that's why you punched that guy in the face." And this hit me like a ton of bricks. And I had thought about it. And even I had done a one-man show when I did my Edinburgh show. And I was working on a one-man show for years. I put this story in there because I think he's right. I think I was so grief-stricken over my sister dying. Well, first my father died. He was killed by a drunk driver in 2009. And I hadn't properly gotten over that when my little sister dies of breast cancer a year and a half later in 2011. And I was mad at God. I really was. And I was drinking profusely to numb the pain, and I didn't realize it until he spoke the words. I was angry at God for taking away two of the people that I love the most in the world, like the two people that I really need, and people that always center me and make me feel loved and centered when I needed it. So if this English guy ever hears this podcast, I just want to say, hey, sorry, buddy. I meant to punch God in the face, not you. But you were acting like a dick that night, and somebody needed to punch you. But it's pretty interesting. You don't realize what you're going through until somebody points it out or you've got some perspective on it. But definitely, fortunately, I'm not angry at God anymore. And but losing these loved ones it's a hole in your life that you never really fill. Anyway, so I think it's hilarious to me that I've been performing in Ireland now for 25 years. I think maybe the first time I went there was 1999 to play in Cork, and then started playing the Laughter Lounge in Dublin. So I've been performing in Ireland for 26 years. And I've done this story a lot. I used to do it a lot whenever I would go to Ireland. This was one of my jokes. There's many a truth spoken a joke, as my grandmother Mildred used to say. I think it's amazing to me that I, as a comedian, get to perform in Ireland, that I get flown there and I get paid to perform, because to me, everyone in Ireland is hilarious. That one of the first times I came to Ireland to perform, I flew into Dublin, and I'm in a taxi heading into the city center. And the national airline of Ireland is called Aer Lingus. And I asked the taxi driver, I said, "Sir, can you tell me, what does Aer Lingus mean?" And the guy goes, "That's another thing I got to find out." And I just thought that was such a funny thing to say. Like the world is full of things this guy can't quite comprehend. That's another thing I got to find out. I mean, and this was back before smartphones, where you couldn't just look something up. You had to ask a taxi driver. Those were your sources of information. And then on that same trip, I was staying in a hotel on the Liffey River. And I knew, and I had walked around Dublin all day by myself, and I was lost. And I knew if I could find my way back to the Liffey River, I could find my hotel. And I went up to a cop and I said, sir, could you tell me how to get to the Liffey River? And he goes, yeah, you just want to keep walking straight, but then you want to stop abruptly or else you fall in. I'm like, who are these hilarious people that everyone has got like a funny line locked and loaded and ready to go? That's Ireland. Everyone you meet is jovial, hilarious, and has got something funny to say. So I've got so many stories, and this trip was amazing. There was another time where, I played in Belfast. There's this great gig up there called the Empire Theatre. I played in Belfast maybe 4 or 5 times. 3 times we're at the Empire Theatre. And I remember I was taking the train from Dublin to Belfast. And there was, this little area, there's like a table and, seating, and then there's like a little table in between. So there was this old guy, about 80 years old, maybe 85, and this dude was pickled. And he looked like he fell out of an old black and white Irish movie with a wool jacket and thick sweater and scratchy looking hat. Everything the guy was wearing looked scratchy and uncomfortable. But he was old and he was drunk. And I was talking to this guy and he was telling me, and the dude smelled like booze. He's drunk. He tells me he was a rare coin collector and he lives in Belfast. And once a year, he'll take the train down to Dublin with these rare coins and he'll sell them and come back. And then he tells me, he goes, and I got these for my grandkids. Look at this. I got this. And he's telling me about he went to this pub and this pub and this pub before he left Dublin. And he goes, look at this. And he pulls out of his pockets, those little coasters? They're made out of cardboard or something similar to cardboard, but they're little beer coasters. So the guy had stolen these from 3 or 4 different pubs, and he had maybe 20 in each pocket. And he pulls them out of his coat pocket and he puts them on the table. But also on the table, in between these coasters were these big wads of cash. And this was I'd say 500 to 800 euros, whatever it was. They were maybe 1,000. It was a lot of money. And then the old man died. He nods off. He fell asleep. The whole time we were talking, he was barely lifting his head up because he was so drunk. I could have stolen all of this man's money, but Jesus said no, and I didn't do it. And I sat there and just looked at it, this temptation, and he eventually woke up and everything. And I said, hey, put your money back in your pockets. But that always stays with me. This trip was really great because there's so many, the music and the literature. This time, yesterday, I got to go up to Killiney Hill, which I had never been there before. And then you look out over Killiney Beach, and that's where Bono lives, and Van Morrison is not far from there. I hope Bono found what he was looking for. But really beautiful swank area. But I think one of the most important things of the trip, there's this comedian. Well, I got to see Carl Spain, Carl Spain is one of the funniest human beings. He's from Limerick, and I've worked with him forever. And Carl Spain is one of the quickest, funniest comedians I've ever seen. I remember years ago, there was someone in the audience was from Nebraska, and he said, "Where are you from?" In Nebraska, he said, "Omaha," and he goes, "The Omaha sounds like a child slowly getting a joke that his mother just told him. Oh, ma, ha." And just the way he just to come off of his head so lightning quick was impressive. So in the last couple of days, I've seen this comedian. I don't know his last name, but his first name is Fred. Really sweet guy. And we were doing the Galway Comedy Festival 10 years ago. And Carl Spain was making fun of the guy. And Fred runs over to me. I saw him yesterday, and he reminded me of this story. Fred runs over to me, and he goes, "Quick, give me a comeback line so I can crush Carl with it." And I said, "Tell him the Asshole Hall of Fame called. They need an updated photo." So he yells out, "The Asshole Hall of Fame called. They need an updated photo." And Carl goes, without missing a beat, he goes, "How'd they get your number first?" And there's the place exploded. So Fred came up to me yesterday, and he reminded me of this. I'd completely forgotten about it. And I was like, there's no way anybody could come back from that Asshole Hall of Fame line. But Carl Spain, one of the funniest human beings ever. So another great friend that I have in Ireland, in Dublin, is this man, Paul Marsh. And Paul is not only a stand-up comedian, but he works for the fire department, the Dublin Fire Brigade. And 2 days ago, he took me to his fire station in Dunleary. That's a really nice area of Dublin. And he gave me a tour. And then he pulled out the fire trucks, and he showed them to me. And he let me shoot the water hose on one of the you can see it on my social media. I'm like, it was one of the happiest moments of my life to actually get to shoot the water out of the hose on a fire truck. But Paul told me this. He took me there. So I'm so happy spraying that water, and I was actually leaping up and down and everything. But one of the reasons I wanted to go there, Paul said that there's like 70 people that work at this fire station. And there's like 20 that are in his unit. And he said that the 20 firefighters who are in his unit, they've been quoting my jokes for years. And there's one line of mine that they've said for years. And I was so flattered by this. I mean, I remember I was in fifth grade, and we went on a field trip, our school, to a firehouse. And whatever age you are, you're going to turn into a 5-year-old kid when you go to a firehouse. So I would have jumped at the chance for a free tour of a firehouse anywhere. And but knowing that his little unit of 20 guys have been quoting my joke forever really tickled me silly. Okay, so let me lay this on you. So let me tell you the joke, first of all, that they've been quoting. So my favorite thing about Canada is that all you ever hear coming out of Canada are happy stories. They're just a happy people. So all you ever hear coming out of Canada is happy stories. My favorite happy story coming out of Canada is that for the last 20 years, on the shores of British Columbia in Canada, human feet have been washing up onto the beach. And you can Google this if you've never heard it. It's a fact. And the remarkable thing about it is that these human feet are always in running shoes when they wash up on the beach. And authorities have been perplexed. They didn't know, is it a killer on the loose? Is it a mafia hit? But I was in Vancouver about 5 years ago, and I read a story in the newspaper, and marine biologists have figured it out. They think it's the suicides from the Vancouver bridges, and that the fish eat the bodies, but they can't get at the feet because the feet are in the running shoes. Isn't that a happy story? Isn't it great to know that there's not a killer on the loose? And I think it says a lot about how committed to fitness Canadians are, that they would jog right up to the very moment that they killed themselves. So that's the joke. And the line that they took from the joke that they say all the time at this firehouse is like if there's a guys who had been working the night shift when the morning guys come in, and they ask them how the night went, and then they'll describe like the most gruesome shit that they witnessed after they tell the story of the horrible shit that they witnessed. They go, "Isn't that a happy story?" So anyway, I think it's really beautiful that they quote that joke. I mean, anytime, that's the greatest compliment you could ever get as a comedian, is when people quote your jokes, or a line of yours becomes part of people's vernacular and the way they reference things or describe something in life. I think that's the greatest compliment there is. Anyway, I couldn't believe that Paul Marsh had never heard this children's joke. Why is a fire truck red? You'd be red too if somebody pulled on your hose. Anyway, it's not funny, but it's a children's joke. So, isn't that a happy story? Oh, and it was also really good for me to talk to Paul Marsh because the suicide that I had witnessed in 2020, because he's seen a lot of, and he had a lot of sympathy for me. He was like, "Oh, that's terrible. What happened to you?" You know, he said, "I see suicides all the time, but I see after the fact. I don't see it happening. We're there we arrive after it's already been done." And he and I had this long conversation about it. In Ireland, the suicide rate is pretty big, and there's rivers like in Galway, in different places around the country, where at night they're called the Samaritans. It's this group of these volunteers, and they hang out on these bridges all night to discourage people from ending their lives, like people coming home drunk from pubs or whatever. And I think that's a really beautiful, caring thing about Ireland, that these do-gooders, these Good Samaritan volunteers are on the search and lookout for really sad, depressed people who might be thinking about ending it all. It's kind of it's a wonderful life. Anywho, and I told Paul Marsh, and I'll have to put this in my next one-man show. The thing I learned from everything, the suicide I witnessed, is that suicide does not end the pain. It only transfers the pain. Whatever pain you might be in, you're transferring that pain to the people who love you, who are left behind, and anyone who might witness it, and then also the people who have to clean it up, or so don't do it, fucker, you selfish bastard. That's what I'm saying. It just transfers the pain. Anywho, so let me tell you about it's funny, like, and I feel so blessed to have been, like, I know all the Irish comedians, to the famous ones to the non-famous ones. And the photo I'm using for this episode, it's got Paul Marsh, Carl Spain, and Anna Clifford. And I met some great new comedians, and there's some really just amazing human beings. And I feel one of the greatest achievements in my career is that I have played in Ireland for 26 years, and that I have all these relationships with people, and that they respect me, and people really love me. And I get so much love in Ireland that if I'm ever depressed again and feeling lost and lonely, like I was, I would say 2022 to 2024, I will not fuck around, and I will come to Ireland. Go where you are loved. Don't Stay where you're getting smacked around emotionally and mentally. Anyway, but having played in Ireland for so long, there was some mythological stories. I want to tell you. So Saturday night, this past Saturday after my sets in Ivy Gardens, I had to swing by the Laughter Lounge to say hello to the owner, Peter, who's been very good to me and through the years. And he told me a story, and it was complete bullshit. It never happened. And it was involving me. And so he was telling me, do you remember when you had sex with the ticket, a girl from the ticket box office named Jane? And I said, no. And he said, yeah, they've been telling that story for years, and that you guys had been drinking, and you were still sleeping when she left, and she took a Sharpie and she wrote on your ass, Jane was here. Anyway, I never had sex with anyone named Jane. That never happened. I would have remembered it. But apparently this is a story that he's been telling. There's another story that I've told and I know he's told. And the first part is true, but the punchline is not true. But just the way people tell stories and things get mythologized through the years. There was an Australian comedian brilliant guy, but he had a heroin problem. And it was notorious that he had this heroin problem for a long time. But he kicked it. And then he was famous for having kicked this heroin addiction. So he was over, and he had gigs in the UK and in Ireland. And I remember Peter, the owner of the Laughter Lounge, telling me this story years ago. And it's showtime, and this comedian who's supposed to be free from heroin, he's not at the club, and the show is in progress. The hotel is like a few blocks away from the Laughter Lounge. So Peter goes to the hotel. He knows the manager. He's been putting comedians there for years, and he has the manager open the door. And the guy was on his bed. He had his pants were down to his ankles, and he was passed out on the bed, and he had a syringe stuck in his arm. He had the heroin had made him conk out, or whatever the medical description is. So they freak out. They call the police. They call the fire department. There's all these emergency workers. There's like 8 firemen, ambulance people, and Peter and the hotel manager in the room, and they're like, whatever they do to revive him. I don't know, defibrillator, smacking him, whatever it is. And then the guy pops straight up, and he sees these, 8 first responders all in his little tiny hotel room. And he says, hey, didn't you guys see the do not disturb sign on the door? Okay, anyway, so everything about that story is true except for the last part. The first time Peter told me that story, I was laughing. I mean, it's a sad story, but that was my joke. I said, hey, didn't you guys see the do not disturb sign on the door? So then now that line gets incorporated into the mythology story, and then that's told as the truth. But that part never happened. Fortunately, that guy, he did clean up. He's brilliant. I won't say his name. It's sad that he relapsed, but apparently, if finding nasty street drugs are your thing, you can also find that in Dublin, Ireland. But I never had sex with a woman named Jane. She never wrote on my buttocks with a Sharpie. And that comedian never said, hey, didn't you see the do not disturb sign on the door? Anyway, so I think that's about it on my Dublin stories. It's such a special place. I love walking around Dublin. It's a young city. The Irish pride is sexy, and just the accents. And oh my God, let me tell you this: they have this Irish brown bread here. It's so, oh my God, it's like cake. It's so wonderful. Oh, and then so at the Camden Court Hotel, there was this big, on Sunday it was their Super Bowl. It's called hurling or curling, whatever their sport is, and it was Kerry versus Donegal, and so the hotel was also had all these comedians and people for the comedy festival staying there, but also it had all these people from all over the country. And so in the finals, it was Kerry versus Donegal. I should have looked up and saw who won it, but I thought, Kerry would be my team because I love their butter. And then Ashna and I on that trip, when I was going stay left, we drove the Ring of Kerry and we drove the Ring of Dingle. Amazing trips if you ever get a chance to do it. I'd have someone else drive. But apparently, what did I say? Donegal, that's it. They're from the Northwest, up by the border of Northern Ireland, and they've only won it 3 times. They were the underdogs. And my friend Brian, the guy he came, I had an extra artist pass, and he spent the whole weekend with me. I arrived Thursday night, and then he and I just walked all over the city and just talking. And we spent so much time just walking all over the city, and then I gave him my extra artist pass. The love and friendship that I have in Ireland is one of my greatest achievements in life. So here, I guess I'll just end the story with this. But that was interesting. I loved that the hotel was full of all these people that were excited about this big match. Okay, so this is, I think, the greatest joke I've ever written about Ireland, and I still do it, and I'll just end the episode with this because I need to go find some of that delicious brown bread. Ireland has been very good to me in my career. I've been playing in Ireland for the last 25 years. And there's a lot more homeless people now in Ireland than there used to be. It amazes me that you would ever see any homeless people ever in Ireland, considering that with Ryanair, the discount airline, it only costs like 18 euros to fly to Spain. So when I'm in Dublin and I'm walking down Grafton Street and some dude goes, "Can I have some money for a room tonight?" I go, "Fuck a room. You're going to Spain, bitch. Here's some extra money for some jamon serrano." So, hey, I hope you're having a great summer. I'm flying to Paris. I got a week in Paris and then a week in Budapest. Last night I saw this great old friend of mine, Barry Humphries, older, famous Irish comedian. And I was talking to him and he said, "Tom, one of the most important things in life to be successful is consistency. And you have always been consistent. You've always been the same man through the years." And he said, "I would listen to a podcast if it was just you talking about your travel experiences." And I said, "Hey, I do have a podcast." I said, I don't put it out as often as I should, but I do have a podcast. So anyway, I'm going to give you the best that I got, and hopefully I can start putting these out once a week. A little kick in the ass. All right, hooray for humanity, and hooray for you, wherever you are. Get some watermelon. I love you. Hey, I'm back. I just wanted to give you a quick update. Since I recorded that first part of the podcast, a few hours later, I got a message from Paul Marsh, the fireman comedian I talked about earlier, and his captain of the Dublin Fire Brigade saw the video that I posted and was unhappy about it, where I'm shooting the hose, shooting the water from the fire truck. And they asked me to take it down. So I hope you saw it before it was deleted. One of the happiest moments of my life, one of the definitely the peak joy moments of my summer, was getting to go to this firehouse and shoot the hose off of the fire truck. So what have we learned here about Ireland? That Irish people will do the nicest possible things for you. They'll show you their water stain that looks exactly like Jesus at the Last Supper. They'll take you to a fire station and they'll let you shoot the water from the hose connected to the fire truck. But they don't want you bleeding telling anybody about it. So they'll do nice things for you, but you got to keep it an absolute secret. So tisk, tisk, tisk. Anyway, I lived it. Some things are just for your eyeballs. Some things are just for your heart and your spirit. And I'm happy it happened. But kind of a bummer. I had to delete it. Anyway, and I'm sorry I did not get to see Tommy Tiernan. He closed out the last night of the festival, and I didn't get to see him. But Tommy Tiernan is the guy. When I first started going to Galway 25 years ago, man, I would party with that guy. We would dance all night. Just lunatics having fun after comedy shows. And then I saw him a few years later, and he had completely given up drinking. And I saw him a few times through the years. And in my mind, he quit. He told me that he was going to quit drinking alcohol for 10 years and then come back to it. And that's actually where I got the idea to quit drinking for 10 years. But I saw Tommy Tiernan the last time I was in Ireland doing the Dublin Comedy Festival, 2019. And I said this to him. And I said that I had given up the drink myself. And he said, oh, no, it wasn't 10 years. He said I went 7 or 8 years. So, but nonetheless, and then he started drinking again. So Tommy Tiernan, absolute comedy legend from Ireland. And I'm grateful that I got that idea. So now I am 11 years off of the booze. And I feel like my personality is shining brighter than ever because I'm not dulling it with alcohol. Anywho, take a trip to Ireland. If you like to drink a lot, if you like to laugh a lot, and just be prepared to take a pilgrimage to Cork to see the Last Supper, water stain. And if you get to shoot water from a water cannon hose connected to a fire truck, you won't be able to tell anybody. Oh yeah, Paul Marsh said that last year Henry Winkler, the Fonz, had been given a tour of the fire station, and they let him get into the basket on the hook and ladder, and they lifted him all the way up. And he had posted that on his social media, and the same captain contacted Henry Winkler and asked him to take it down. So I shouldn't take it personally. Even the Fonz isn't cool enough to post on his social media getting a private tour from the Dublin Fire Brigade. Anywho, just had to add this little addendum to this podcast, and I'm motivated. I've got travel stories. I'm going to Paris next, my favorite city in the world, and I will delight you with more stories next week. Hooray for humanity, and hooray for you. You know I love you, baby.